Welcome back to the 25 days of Whiskey Christmas. This is the last day, so let me be the first to say Merry Christmas to you. We've made it 25 days, and we have a very, very special episode for you today to celebrate those 25 days. So let's get right into it. For the last day of 25 days of Whiskey Christmas, day 25, we are going to review two bourbons. These bourbons are made by the same company, but they are a study in contrast. They may start with the same mash bill, maybe, but everything about them is different. The amount of time that they are aged is different. Where their location in the rick house is different. Literally top floor or bottom floor. The color of them is different. The availability of them is very different. And probably the biggest difference is price. One being one of the most expensive Buffalo Traces there is, Buffalo Trace products there is, and one of the cheapest. So let me show you what those two are. I alluded to it without a proper introduction. My apologies. So let me say this officially. Both bourbons that we are going to review today are made by the Buffalo Trace Company. Our first one is Benchmark Top Floor. The Benchmark series has 5 bourbons in it. They start with a entry level at 80 proof. There's an 86 proof, which is what this one is. They have a 90 proof. They have 100 proof bottled in bond, and then there's another one. I'm not sure what it is. They are the entry level to a Buffalo Trace product. They are the cheapest Buffalo Trace product. And in my opinion, the top floor is literally the best of those 5 benchmarks. The second bourbon that we are going to review, this is going to be a little bit hard to read, so I'm just going to show you the back, is George T. Stagg. And it's hard to see that label against the white. There we go. This one happens to be the 2019 bottle. Let's start with the Benchmark review first. We should probably start with where the name came from for the Benchmark Top Floor. It literally means where it was aged. This, quite literally, comes from barrels that were stored on the top floor, the highest point in the rick house. I took some notes on what that means, and Buffalo Trace releases a statement about that, and they say barrels on the top floor tend to age faster as heat rises. They say from one floor to the next floor can be as much as 12 degrees difference inside of a rick house. So, and the aging from month over month, this is going to gain its color quicker. Unfortunately, that also means it pulls its color quickly. And so if you left it in there for 20 years, it wouldn't get any darker. So just starting with the color, this is already lighter. We're going to do our first comparison. This is the George T. Stagg. This is the Benchmark. Remember, this is the same whiskey. This is the same exact whiskey. It starts as the same whiskey, I should say. Let's go in for that nose. Kind of starts right out with some faint vanilla. Kind of smell the alcohol. I don't know whether that's like an ethanol smell. Which is funny on a lower proof. Maybe some hints of oak, some light caramel too. But I'd say the vanilla starts it. Again, you can smell the alcohol. I don't know if that's a good thing. You can smell the corn whiskey. Yeah. And then carries into a light oak and a light caramel. This is a fainter nose. It's almost like this will be less complicated versus the Stag. When we get there, will probably be a little bit more complicated. Let's taste it. Had a few people comment on my moving my face around. Trying to get it as much contact with my tongue and the different parts of my tongue as I can. I don't know that I'm an expert in the tasting or the nose or the palate or even the finish. So I try to get as much as I can. So there's the faces. This has vanilla, but it's almost like a creamy vanilla. I was concerned smelling that ethanol in the nose that this was going to taste thin, like just corn whiskey. It does not. This is well-bodied. It's thin. It doesn't have a lot of viscous or viscosity to it. It's not coating my mouth. But the vanilla is very creamy. It's very soft. The caramel is there. Again, very light though. You sense the oak. The oak kind of hits the back of the tongue. And what's interesting is as it is going away, because remember I said doesn't have a lot of body to it. The finish is not long. It doesn't last long. It has almost a peppery finish, but a sweet pepper. It's like the sweet creaminess of the vanilla that started is affecting the pepper finish. Definitely a pepper finish, but a sweet pepper. Like a peppercorn, but sweet. I don't know if I don't even know that is a thing, but that's kind of how the finish is. So again, this is Benchmark Top Floor. I'm going to reserve my ratings for both of these until the end. We're going to review the Stag next, and then we're going to do a comparison of the two together and all of those contrasts. So the next one, just as a reminder, I'll just show you the back. George T. Stagg. The George T. Stagg Distillery was developed by George T. Stagg. He was the money. And the person who was the brains behind the operation was a guy named E.H. Taylor. I'm sure you've heard of that bourbon. Both of those funneled down and are now owned by Buffalo Trace. But a lot of people would like to refer to the Gilded Age of bourbon, which was about 1865 to 1890. In those years, George T. Stagg and E.H. Taylor created a distillery and a bourbon that was top tier. It was highly respected, and it continues to be that. The George T. Stagg is released only once a year. It is inside the BTAC collection, which is Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. It's 5 different bourbons, all of them with some age, all of them with some proof, and all of them unbelievable. This might be, in a lot of people's opinion, the flagship of the BTAC. This is one of the most, if you get outside of the Pappy Van Winkle name, and you start to name bourbons that people chase and want and think are the pinnacle of bourbon, George T. Stagg will almost undoubtedly be on most people's list. I came across this by chance, a friend of a friend, and a forgotten case sitting in the back a couple years later. Got it for MSRP, which has gone up a little bit, which we'll talk about in a second. But George T. Stagg is a stellar bourbon. As I go in for this nose, I want you to think about the fact of how much different this is going to be than what the benchmark was. The benchmark had 2 or 3 nose notes, 2 or 3 palate notes, and 2 or 3 finish notes. This is going to be much more involved and much more complex. Let's do this. Oh my goodness gracious, that's amazing. Bursting forth with some vanilla right out of the gate. Some toffee. I don't know if holding it in my left hand will make the sense different. Even like a burnt toffee almost. There's some oak in there, absolutely. This is an older product. So you're gonna, if spent more time in that oak barrel, you're gonna get some more oak. Some berries. Maybe a little bit of yeah, the berries come out a little bit more the longer it sits. I've had this poured for about 15 minutes. Maybe 20 minutes. Yeah, toffee, vanilla, oak, berries. Huh. I can't wait any longer. Tasting time. This is immediately milk chocolate. Not dark chocolate, which is often relatable to bourbons, but milk chocolate. Not in an offensively sweet way either. Not like that Angel's Envy with it was super uber sweet. This is a soft, perfectly balanced chocolate. More toffee. This has a lot longer finish. I was just going to go for another taste, but there's still stuff happening inside my mouth. It has something's happening across the mid-range of my tongue. Nougat. Fudge. I think if you melted a Milky Way, the candy bar, not the solar system, if you melted a Milky Way candy bar and ate it as it was melting, that's what this would taste like. Caramel, fudge, chocolate, nougat, like that nougat taste. I don't know what nougat flavor is except to call it nougat. It does carry the oak. The oak is there, more towards the back of the mouth. As it sits in my mouth a little bit longer, I'm also getting maybe some dates. Maybe some coffee, some black pepper. And I'm talking more about the finish now. It's just so complex. There's so much going on here. I'd pay the higher price just for all the different events that are happening in my mouth right now. Raspberries. A little bit of leather. Dates. That melted Milky Way. The vanillas, the caramels. This is good. All right, I'm gonna set this down. Let's talk about the two different fact sheets, okay? Starting with the Benchmark. The Benchmark's a straight bourbon, distilled and bottled by Buffalo Trace, 86 proof. No age statement, but it is reported to be a 2 to 3 year bourbon. An undisclosed mash bill, which we've talked about before. Here's the kicker, $15. I think I spent $14.90 something for this bottle. So with tax, $15. The George T. Stagg, it's gonna be different. Straight bourbon, distilled and bottled by Buffalo Trace. This particular year is coming in at 116.9 proof. That is the lowest proof point in the 2+ decade history of George T. Stagg in the BTAC collection. It is normally, I wrote this down, it's normally around 130 to 138 proof. This is a 15-year-old bourbon. It is an undisclosed mash bill, but there are a lot of rumors out there that this is the exact same mash bill. Buffalo Trace only has 3 to 4, depending who you ask. They have a high rye, they have a low rye, they have a wheated. A lot of people think this is their traditional wheated mash bill for both the Benchmark series and the George T. Stagg. Here's the kicker. A year ago, the MSRP on this was $99, $99.99, $100. It went up to $129 this year. You can't find it though. Yeah, good luck. Ohio just had a lottery for the very limited bottles. They did not have this bottle in this location, in this part of the state. You can buy this on the secondary. The 2019 right now is selling for $1,799.99, so $1,800. The 2017, there's a couple for sale for $2,500. You get a little bit older, it jumps to about $5,000 or $7,000. This is a $1,000 bottle. My friend Andrew, who lives in Kentucky, in Louisville, said that he could get this bottle for me when it came out in the fall if I wanted it. I needed to be prepared to spend between $900 and $1,000. And that was in a store. Ohio's an MSRP state, so we don't get that. That's why they only do it, that and Pappy and some of these others, they only do it as a lottery. And that the lottery is literally just you winning the opportunity to purchase. You're not winning the bottle. You're winning the opportunity to purchase. The other thing that's really important to note in these distinctions is that the George T. Stagg is aged on the bottom floor, the first floor of its rickhouse. According to Buffalo Trace, that is cooler, obviously, but it also has higher humidity, which also creates a little bit more evaporation of the alcohol versus the water. So you end up getting a little bit different product versus the top floor, which is higher heat, quicker aging. This ages slower, so you actually pull the oak over the years. You pull those flavors and those caramels. So here's where we are. Just as a reminder, Benchmark, George T. Stagg. These are very, very studies in contrast. Same mash bill, same company, maybe even the same rick houses, but completely different bourbons. The question is, does the one make itself better? Well, the simple answer is yes, it's a better bourbon. But this Benchmark is a really good bourbon. The entire Benchmark series, a lot of people swear by the bottled in bond. I think the top floor is better than the bottled in bond. That's my personal opinion. For $15, I would challenge you to find a better bourbon under $25 than the Benchmark series. I would challenge you to do that. Less, like $24.99 and less. Find me a better bottle. a better tasting, a better nose, a better even across the board balanced bottle than the Benchmark series. It's not as good as the George T. Stagg. But unless you have a couple $1,000s, you're not getting a George T. Stagg anyway. The 2 or 3 cases that might get released, or I should say 2 or 3 barrels that might get released every single year, and the 2 or 3 cases that might come to your state, good luck. And I'm not ripping on anybody. There's a thing called FOMO, fear of missing out. When my buddy Andrew told me I could get a bottle of this for $900, I looked at my budget to see if I could do it because this is so good. I didn't buy one because I've had it. It's good. I'm also just as interested in buying cheaper bottles that give me a good experience. And that's probably where we will end this video, is you have to make those decisions for yourself. Bourbon has gotten really expensive. There's no two ways about that. And it keeps getting more expensive. Find out what you like. If you want a George T. Stagg and you're asking me if you should chase it, I'm not going to tell you no. This is one of the most amazing bourbons that I've ever had in my life. This is, without a doubt, top 2 or 3 bourbons that I've ever had. It's that good. It's balanced. It's not too spicy. It's not too sweet. It's not too anything except too expensive. I'm happy to own it. I'm happy that I got it at the price I got it. So that's it. That's the study in contrast. And I thought, what better way to wrap up the 25 days of Whiskey Christmas? So there it is. Merry Christmas. I hope that you and your family have had a wonderful holiday season. We'll do a wrap up in a couple weeks of this because I think a lot of you have some questions. Please leave a comment. Tell me how much you enjoyed this or didn't enjoy it, whichever the case may be. And the best of the holiday season to you and your family.